We'll call the regular meeting of the Nome Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, September 10th, 2019, 8 a.m. to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. We do have a quorum, so go on to item number 2, approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on anything? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3, EDA Director's Administrative Report. Heather?
Good morning. You have the reports before you. I don't have a lot to talk about this month. Just note under the Home Buyer Assistance Loan Program, there was one loan that closed during the month of September. Another loan is closing on Friday. And one loan application has been approved but is pending while the applicant searches for a home. So, I guess that's all I have to point out unless there's any questions on anything.
Anybody have any questions for Heather?
Nope. I'll make a motion to accept the Economic Development Authority administrative activities.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4, EDA claims list. Heather?
The only thing I'll point out there is we did get the assessment for the street improvement where we have one of our scattered site family units. So I did pay that in full rather than pay, I think it was 4.4% interest for 10 years. So you'll see that on there. Came in too late to put on the agenda last month, but it had to be paid before this meeting. So I went ahead and paid that. Otherwise, it was a quiet month expense-wise, which is nice.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 5, Economic Development Authority, bid for the Milford Heights first edition.
Right, so staff received an offer for Lot 7, Block 4 in the Milford Heights First Edition in the amount of $9,000. This lot is currently priced at $20,000. Just note that Milford Heights Phase 1 is a TIF district, and once a house is constructed and goes on the tax rolls, the EDA collects property taxes to help make payments to the TIF district. We collect no property tax revenue on an empty lot. You can see the map is attached, so you can see the lot that we are talking about. It's been almost 2 years since we've sold a lot up at Milford Heights, so although the price offered is considerably lower than what we have it priced at, I guess the market has spoken. So you can take that into consideration. And then I'll just open it up to questions or comments.
Anybody have any questions, concerns?
Well, I have a question with, if they are looking at 9,000 for what we would price it at 20,000, and then we see there's a lot for 12.5. You know, is someone going to probably offer $1,000 and we approve it and we could approve it as such? What is the actual value now? I mean, we had it listed for 20,000, but what is the value of it?
I don't know, Chris.
I think value is what a buyer and seller agree to it.
What do we have stuck in it? Probably what she's really saying,
It's
right?
around 6,800 in
Okay.
dirt,
Around there.
you know, and just the cost to get the
original
lot
cost, but that doesn't
buildable.
include assessments that we've paid
Right.
Right.
to date and will continue to pay on it till it's sold.
Right.
So if we do approve this for like 9,000, we can be almost assured that all the other lots will go for 9,000 or less as well.
I would say.
Yeah.
It's fair,
Could
fair
that-
assumption.
Mhm.
Yeah.
1,000, 2,000, whatever it is, to get rid of them. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think we were at a point, about a year and a half ago, where we were saying, give us an offer. Because as it continues forward, it's only costing us money. So every time we sell a lot, at least we're eliminating the cost. I'm looking at it as much as that as any kind of revenue that we may get in terms of the sale of the lot at this particular point. These have been around for a long time. And I believe it's in our best interest to keep moving forward at whatever price we're able to attain for these lots.
So do you know what we have in that lot 7 for costs?
Not total. The original assessments were about 25,000, and I think we have we have 2 years left to pay on that, so 2/10 of that is left. And then the new assessments as well. I don't know if these buyers are TIF qualified, if they'll take the assessments, or if
It's my
we'll continue to
understanding
pay
they're
them.
not TIF eligible, so they will take over the assessments, starting
Date of purchase, I would
2020.
assume, yeah. So the original cost of about 6,800, and then probably
Okay.
about 18,000 of those original assessments we've paid to date.
Just on that property? Holy schmoly. Okay.
Any more questions?
I'll offer the motion to approve the sale of the lot.
We have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, sell a lot for 9,000. Any more discussion?
Would it make sense to counteroffer this one at all for any more, or are we just wanting to get it off our hands?
I guess.
We've waited 2 years to get any offer. Are we willing to wait another 2 years and then go through another round of assessments? That's my personal thoughts on it.
I guess my thinking is we want to get rid of the house building and go on to something else, and maybe just to trigger more interest. Maybe somebody else will come along and maybe we'll get rid of them all. I'm okay with the 9,000. I think we need to get out of it and get going. Just my concern. Anybody else? Any more? Not? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. We'll go on to item 5.2, audit annual financial report.
Okay, I'll go through this fairly quickly. I know it always ends up being a lot of numbers that don't always mean a lot to everybody, but, so we had our audit this year. They were here, at the beginning of August. Things went really well, and then they came back with this report. So I'll just go through some of these numbers. Looking at everything overall, we have an unrestricted net position of $277,000, which was an increase over last year, or that's actually, it was an increase of $277 in our net position over last year, with a total net position of $71,111. Also went up. Our cash investments increased almost $280,000, and then the business revenues actually decreased almost $80,000, and the operating expenses for the business type activities, which includes the market rate housing, like Garden Terrace and the rental properties. The expenses went up about $111,000. Looking at net position, this compares the total assets versus the total liabilities, and you can see we're sitting on quite a bit of assets with all of the properties we own, especially with Garden Terrace. So this looks promising, or looks healthy anyway. This just breaks down the net position by the different portions of the EDA, the governmental unit, which is just the basic EDA funds. And the other categories didn't fill. They were in there. The largest part of the pie is the market rate housing, which includes, like I said, Garden Terrace and the rentals. The smallest portion is the Section 8. The rental properties are the next smallest, and I'm struggling to remember that. Oh, the public and Indian housing is that other quarter of the pie, that lighter green color. I apologize for those not being there. And this is a newer graph I've stuck in the information. It just shows our cash investment balances, and it compares it over the last few years. And you can see that it's growing quite a bit, mostly due to Garden Terrace. With no debt there, everything we make is revenue, it's money in our pocket. So that's really contributed to the growth here. And then this is the revenue comparing the government versus the business activities. You can see there's a big change from last year. In 2018 in the government, we had, you chose to forgive those loans to the TIF fund. So that was a huge expense, and then, or the revenue to them, I'm sorry, it was revenue to the government activities. And then the land sale, the Milford Heights was also in there. So that was a big increase in the revenue for last year. But this year we're back more on a normal level. This is the same thing, it just shows the expenses. And I'll get into more of this detail in the next few slides. It kind of breaks down what some of those changes were. So looking at the government activities, there was a decrease in the revenues of about $900,000. And that, of course, like I said, there was no land sale this year, and then that forgiveness of the loan impacted 2018 quite a bit. The expenses also decreased about $1 million. This is due to the assessments that we did choose to pay in full on the lots that we've already sold to TIF qualified buyers last year. So their net position actually increased $165,000 for the year. And then looking at the public and Indian housing, the revenues decreased about $73,000. That was just lower transfers from the capital fund based on the grants that were needed or applied for repairs and those types of things. Expenses increased about $9,500, and that was mostly in maintenance. There was some contract costs that were up about $22,000. So their net position decreased about $150,000 for the year. Then looking at Section 8, the revenue decreased about $28,000, and that was operating grants that were down about $28,000. The expenses decreased about $1,300. That was due to a decrease in housing assistance payments of about $6,800. So their net position also decreased almost $12,000. And then the market rate housing, the revenues increased about $24,000, and that was mostly accounted for by increases in rent and in interest. The expenses decreased about $400,000. That's because this is where the transfer came for that loan forgiveness last year, so they didn't have that expense this year. But they did also have a large increase in maintenance costs this year. I know they did some larger projects. The rental properties, it really didn't have much of a change. There was the transfer to the TIF fund, which is generally an annual transfer, but they didn't have that last year, so it showed up as an increase in the expenses this year. And then the capital assets, you can see, decreased about $200,000. Most of that was due to the typical depreciation. And then there was that we had to account for that donation of land for the Kiesling house. That was about $17,000. So in summary, I know I went very quickly. If you have any questions, you'll just have to let me know. It was an unmodified opinion, so good news for us. No instances of noncompliance were material to the financial statements, and there was no deficiencies in the internal controls. So all in all, it was a good audit. It was clean. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5.3, Greater Minnesota Partnership Membership.
Yes, thank you. This morning before you is a decision that needs to be made on becoming a full member of the Greater Minnesota Partnership. City has been a member of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities for 4 decades. This organization is a spin-off that focuses on economic development things. There's some more information in the overview. Staff is recommending that we join and continue the membership with this organization. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Does anybody go to the meetings? I mean, is there meetings that people go to and get information from? And
There are meetings of this group, and yes, someone should be going from the city, so I'm sure Chris is gone, or I will go. We'll make sure, depending on the topics, I bet you know, even if it's like housing or something, we'll send Heather. But yes, they have good information.
Has anybody gone in the past?
I have gone in the past.
Okay.
So have I.
Good.
Any more questions, concerns?
I'll offer the motion to authorize the membership in the Greater Minnesota Partnership in the amount of $1,500.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5.4, Small Business Incentive Grant Program. Chris?
Good morning. So what you have before you is a grant program that we would like to approve today and start kicking off probably November 1st. I've worked on this program for a while, so it's not a draft. I think the only thing that you may feel inclined to change is the dollar amount, but outside of that, the program is pretty much ready to go. And so what this program is, it's not a loan, it's actually a grant program for small businesses and categorizing small businesses, a business fewer than 10 people, including the owner. Nonprofits are not eligible. The only home-based business that is eligible for this program is in-home daycare. The business must be located in a commercial or industrial storefront with an individual address. Shared suites are not eligible. Right now, it currently sits as the maximum reimbursable rebate is $10,000. The business has to submit invoices and receipts with proof of payment, so canceled checks, bank statements. They can black out all other transactions except for the transactions that show that that invoice was paid. They do have to be open for at least 3 months before applying, and they have 1 year from the date of opening to apply for the grant, or they're no longer eligible. And so that's kind of the program, and the reason we ask them to be open for at least 3 months, so that way a business isn't just opening, asking for $10,000 after open for a week and then closing down a little bit later, and then asking for the receipts and invoices and proof of payment, so you're not getting shipping receipts or things like that. It's actually coming from your business account to show that those transactions, so kind of fraud prevention on that portion. Application, fairly simple, a one-page application, and what we're requesting is $10,000, and we would fund 5 businesses at a max. So we're asking $50,000 total. If you lowered that amount, I'd still ask that we fund 5 businesses, no matter what that total is.
Sounds good. Any questions for Chris?
Chris, you would kind of keep us up to date if we were to go forward, like how many have been funded and,
Yes,
and such?
just like in Heather's report, it'd be another line item in there. I figure this will be a good starting point, and we'd probably get through, I'd say, at a minimum 3, but hopefully all 5 throughout the year.
Great. Well, it seems pretty straightforward to me, I guess.
I think it's a
I
good
like
idea,
it.
so go ahead.
I would say I like it. I like the program. I like that it could be an option too for in-home daycares, so which is a shortage. So definitely good idea.
I'll offer a motion to approve the Small Business Incentive Grant Program.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 6.1, 2020 budget for rental property fund. Heather?
Right. This is a fairly small budget compared to our other budgets that we run through the EDA. This covers the single-family rental house that the EDA owns at 320 North Broadway, as well as the vacant parking lot at 326 North Broadway. And this budget will be included in the city's annual budget documentation as well. primary issues, the rent for the rental house at 320 North Broadway is currently set at $550 a month. We are proposing a rent increase of $25 a month on that house for 2020. And then the parking lot at 326 North Broadway, currently Broadway House Apartments pays the EDA $600 a year to use that lot when we need to move our tenants' cars, mainly for snow removal during the winter, but we recently had an alley project going on, and we had to move tenant cars for several weeks while that work was going on, so we used the lot during that project as well. Alliance Bank is currently renting that lot from the EDA during their construction project, so we do see a little bit of revenue there depending on the year. You can see the budget attached. The 2020 budget, the total budget is $7,500, so again, very small budget, but one we need to approve every year. Are there any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I'll offer a motion to approve the 2020 budget for rental properties fund.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 7, Garden Terrace Apartments, Garden Terrace budget, 2020.
All right, this will be our final budget to approve for the year. The 2020 budget for Garden Terrace reflects a moderate inflation adjustment based on our year-to-date expenses. We are budgeting a substantial decrease on the electric utility line because we are doing an LED conversion project this fall. So we expect to see some significant savings in our electric bill beginning next year. You can see the proposed 2020 rents listed there in the report. I do look at other market rate rentals in New Ulm every year when I'm looking at this budget and we're deciding where to set the rents. Even with the proposed increases, our rents at Garden Terrace will still range by square foot from 77 cents to $1.06. Depending on the size of the unit, and that compares to a range of $1 to $1.23 per square foot at other similar properties. I will note that our buildings are older than the other market rate properties that I'm comparing to, so I think we're in line, in being a little bit lower rent per square foot because our buildings aren't brand new like the other ones that we're comparing with. That said, we still do offer some nice amenities with the underground parking and that sort of thing that we are able to offer at Garden Terrace that not all the market rate properties have. So, unless you direct us otherwise, you can see the proposed rents. The larger the unit, the larger the rent increase that we're proposing. But I think we need to keep in line with the other market rate units in town as much as we can, so that we're not, I don't know how you want to say, unfairly subsidizing our units for the other ones that have to compete with us. Any questions on anything you see here?
Are there any major proposed capital improvements for 2020 for Garden Terrace? Are we looking pretty good in terms of the shape of the buildings and
Our
anything?
buildings are in good shape. We are looking at, I have a list in here somewhere of what Lloyd Management was proposing. If I can find it here in my notes. We are looking at installing a keyless entry system for the buildings. They are secured buildings, and we went to a keyless system at Broadway House about 8 or 9 years ago. And I am proposing converting Garden Terrace over to that as well. We talked about surveillance cameras, but we didn't feel that was necessary over there at this time. And then they were suggesting maybe some unit upgrades, maybe getting some newer appliances and that kind of thing. So
Okay.
that's what we're looking at for next year.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I'll offer the motion to approve the 2020 Garden Terrace budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Other business, item number 8.1, retail strategies presentation. Chris?
All right. So Retail Strategies has been online for about 6 months now. And so they've come back and put together a presentation on kind of the data they've collected so far. There's really no leads. At this point, they have had contact with a couple retailers that seem interested in coming to New Ulm, but it's still early stages. So the presentation that they have doesn't reflect any of the initial conversations they had until they're farther along in the process and they turn them over to the city to negotiate where to have those retailers. So realistically, I'd like to start on probably slide number 4, go over some highlights in the presentation. So the first slide that we'll look at is, retail is complicated. And this is something that is very true, being in the industry for at least 12 years and going to a lot of the retailer shows. It does take between 18 to 36 months to close a deal, from the initial talking to a site selector all the way to them opening up a store. It takes between 18 to 36 months depending on where that retailer is in their life cycle. So some of the trends that they're looking at, some of the trends in the industry, it's always changing. Millennials have a huge impact right now. E-commerce and omni-channel, we'll talk about in another slide. Opening and closing, restaurants are really big, and site selection changes on a daily basis. So moving on is e-commerce. It has nothing but growth right now. It's not as big of a piece of the pie as everyone thinks it is. It's only about 9.4% of the sales, but it will continue to increase. The millennials are, again, probably one of the biggest segments in the market right now, and they would give up their sense of smell rather than their technology. So with that in mind, that's the shift and why retail and online shopping is pretty prominent in everyone's eyes. And if you look in the next example, everything's consolidated into your phone. Your camera, your email, an actual phone, your alarm clock, news, you can pretty much do everything on your phone. So when you're looking at what omni-channel is, that's when you have your brick and mortar store and your online presence. So how do you get people from shopping online to in your store to actually buy products, and vice versa? Once you get them in your store, how do you get them online to continue that customer relations? But looking at the data, most people, about 3/4 of the population, actually prefer to shop in store. And so when you're shopping in store, you're actually spending more time in that store than on a website, and you're actually spending more money in store than online. Because when you shop online, you're there for a particular item and you buy that item and you're out. When you're in a store, you're like, oh, I need to get this. I need to get this. Oh, I didn't know I needed this. And you put more stuff in your cart and you walk out the door. So what Retail Strategies is looking at is they are the retail and real estate experts, and we are what you would consider the local experts. We know the community, and so with them here, we can have that synergy to find what is the fit for our area. So a lot of their research partners that they have a lot of partnerships to get data, and that data is available to us if we need specific reports. A lot of their research, again, a lot of federal agencies, a lot of private agencies, Esri. We use Esri as our GIS, so a lot of information that we get that they can pull, we can actually plug into our GIS systems. The big number that is really important is the 9,703 retail contact information site selection criteria. So this I would pay money just for this. And this is the contacts that constantly change in the relationships that we as a city don't have with the retailer and site selectors that they do have. So I would go to a lot of the shows that they go to and meet the site selection reps and a lot of the reps for a lot of the retailers. And when I moved out here, I called every single one of them. Only 3 were left. 2 were going to retire at the end of the year, and 1 was finding another job. So these contacts change on a regular basis. They're basically like salesmen, and they don't meet their quotas or they find a different position. They constantly change. So with retail strategies, they constantly have a presence in front of these site selectors. So they always know who is there, and they have that rapport with them to help them select appropriate site. So looking at New Ulm, again, population a little over 13,000, and that's our geographical area. And the old tradition in retail was doing your 1, 3, and 5 mile ring outside of the city. Well, going 1, 3, and 5 miles outside of New Ulm, you don't pick up too many extra individuals, or your population doesn't really increase that much. So some of the change has been in drive times, looking at how far someone's willing to drive. So they go out about 20 minutes, which helps increase our population size. So if you're looking across here, within a 3 mile radius, there's about 11,000 population. And that's just individuals that have purchasing power that isn't total residency, why it would be a little bit smaller than our current population. So as you get farther and farther out, our population increases. And what that does is it helps us look more attractive to retailers, because they know who's going to come, who's willing to drive X amount of time to get what they need. So another thing that Retail Strategies has done is they look at mobile data collection. So this is actually from Walmart. So they pinged individual's phone when they got to Walmart, and then they ping their phone back when they were at home. So then it comes and puts together a larger trade area where actually people are driving from, not an estimated guess. So that increases our population and purchasing power to entice more retailers. So if you look at that trade area, our population jumps from 13,000 to about 44,000, a little over 44,000, which is a much better number for retailers to look at and entice them to come. Our median household income in that same trade area is about 55,000. Average housing price, 179. And in our customized trade area, our daytime population is about 48% of people employed within the city, which is good. That means people are driving from outside, coming in, and spending money and their time in New Ulm. Again, a little bit breakdown of the average salary per employee and our educational attainment. So half of that trade area has some college all the way up to a doctorate, and then most have at least a high school education. So the next slide that really is actually really important is what you would call our gap analysis or retail leakage. So looking at the food, service, and drink, there is a potential market of 24 million that is essentially leaving New Ulm that we're not tapping into. So that's a very big, and we do hear it. Some say that we're oversaturated in food and restaurants, but the way I look at it, there's not enough. I've essentially stopped eating out because I'm tired of eating at the same places. So there's money that not being spent in the community. But you can go down the list: health and personal care, clothing, electronics, general merchandise, building materials, furniture, miscellaneous, and sporting goods. So next would be our peer analysis. So you're looking at Red Wing is kind of the closest that's still in the state, and their median income is less than us, but they're actually spending about 150 million more, or drawing 150 million more in market supply than we do. And so how do you look at that information? And is it, again, people like me that just don't want to spend money because they're tired of eating at the same places, or there's lack of stuff, so they're going elsewhere to shop. So how do we tap into that market and get them to spend money here? And it's, again, part of the retail recruitment process. So in 2019, the retail growth sectors are automotive, discount, dollar store, children's apparel, off-price apparel, pet supply, sporting goods, banks, fast casual, fast food, groceries. And so those are a lot of the areas that they're going to be focusing on, because those are areas that retailers are looking to expand. So the boots on the ground, they've already been here. So they've gone through and they've looked at all available sites. They've cataloged a lot of the retail spaces. They've met with listing agents. They've worked with commercial property owners in town. They've come and talked to myself to get a overall general lay of the land and kind of what we would like to see in the city. So what home run real estate is ample parking. So you don't have to have on-street parking, high visibility and signage, easy access, high traffic count, potentially co-tenancy. No one likes to be by themselves, and convenience. How easy is it to get there? So the next slide is kind of currently where our pockets of retail are within the city. And this is where they're going to focus on potentially locating some other retailers within the city along those same corridors. So how they connect, what they're looking at is restaurants, general merchandise, health and wellness, and clothing are kind of the main areas. If there is an area that we want them to focus on more than another, we can let them know, and they'll go down that route. And so what they do is they connect the retailers to the sites. So they'll get all the information to the retailers and then hand them over to the city or introduce them to the city, so we can help them get into the site and help broker that deal to help them grow. And so right now they're in their reporting phase. So they put together a lot of marketing flyers, putting together a city site, and then they're going to do their conference recruitment. So their marketing guide is pretty standard. A lot of the information that's in here in the presentation is in the marketing guide to help a site selector choose a site within the city. A lot of the information, is updated real time so that they can get the most accurate information to those site selectors. And if there are specific site selectors that they know need certain information, they tailor those marketing brochures to those site selectors. And city sites will be up where all this information will be. We can link it on our site, so all the information is consistent across the board. So a site selector doesn't look in the marketing brochure, then come to our site and the numbers are totally different. So it'll all be consistent. ICSC is the International Council of Shopping Centers. This is a really big event in Vegas that they go to, and it's basically a 4-day event, and they meet nothing but developers and retailers, and it's a huge conference. And usually they go dark. They just went dark for about a month and a half to digest all that information after that. And so I know they're going to Chicago the end of this week for another ICSC event. It's a regional deal-making event. So their ongoing efforts, again, continually give us information, expand on their retail efforts, and then any type of information that we need, they are pretty much our research concierge to get us any information. And I will say they have talked to a handful of retailers that seem interested in coming to New Ulm. Again, they just can't release the information on who it is. So that is out there, and they do have, our retailers have a good inkling of potentially opening up in the city. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Chris? If not, Entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Item number 9, Economic Development Director, Administrative City Manager Activity Report. Do you have it in front of you? Do you have anything you want to add?
Not necessarily, but just really working on a lot of childcare. Hearing lots of concerns about that. Heather and I and Chris have met, talked a little bit about that, so it still seems to be at a crisis point in our community.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I'll make,
offer your motion to
No.
accept the report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. With no more business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.